Hello, and welcome to We Live for Saturday, your favorite college football podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike. With me, as always, is your other co-host, John. But, John, we have a very special guest today.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself. Tell us all about you.
We've got Doug.
Well,
I'll let me introduce him before he tells us about himself. This is Doug from the QB11 show. So thank you so much for coming on, Doug. And you are here to talk about the Oregon Ducks. But yeah, introduce yourself and kind of what you do.
Yeah. Thank you. Doug Scott, co-host of the QB11 show, along with my partner, Andrew, QB11, my podcast partner there. I'm a native Oregonian, been an Oregon Duck fan for 40 years. So no, I'm not one of the ones that joined after Chip Kelly and everything got good. I've suffered through some of those 80s, mid 80s nightmare seasons and all that stuff. So obviously it's been a great run for the last 25, 30 years or so, but I've just been a fan for a really long time, and just started that podcast, just over 4 years now we've been doing it, and just love talking football, love talking Ducks, love college football as a whole, and love being in the Big Ten. I unlike many who were sad to see the Pac-12 go, like I have my memories and a lot of good ones, but I also was like recognizing where the sport was heading, and the move to the Big Ten was absolutely a must-have, no-brainer decision. And obviously Oregon fared very well there in the first year, not just in football. I think we won 8 conference titles across all sports, which led the conference. So incredible, great year one for Oregon in the Big Ten, and super excited for year 2, 3, 4, and many more to come.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll say, as John, as guys who have been waiting maybe our entire natural lives for a Big Ten title, winning one in the first year in the conference is something. I mean, it's amazing. And I think because the Rose Bowl went the way it did, I honestly don't think Oregon sufficiently got their flowers, because in a league as tough as the Big Ten, which we've seen in the last 2 years is the toughest league in college football, to go undefeated and win the league, 10 out of 10, no notes. I mean, that's as good a regular season as you could have. So, I mean, what was it like riding that wave? And I mean, did you anticipate having so much success so early in the league?
I mean, I anticipated contending for the league title. I knew what Oregon had been building under Dan Lanning for the last few years. And so I knew what our roster was like. I knew it could compete at that level. I certainly did not predict or anticipate 13-0 running the table through the Big Ten title game. I thought Oregon could be in contention to be in that game for sure from year one. Didn't necessarily think we'd win it. But then when you saw the way the season played out, and obviously that Ohio State game was kind of the hinge point, right? Like you lose that game at home. It was a great game either way, win or lose. And then, then you roll out the rest of the season. Maybe you see them for a rematch again in Indianapolis and see what happens. But then when you win that game, then you start looking ahead. And one of the things that Oregon really was not set up very well with last year was our buys. It was a 2-bye year, but we had one early before any Big Ten game and then one before the final game. So we had 8 straight Big Ten games, 8 straight weeks.
That's rough.
It was a tough run. And then the last one of those was that game at Wisconsin, which Oregon struggled in and had to kind of pull it out in the fourth quarter. And credit to Wisconsin, they played a really good game, had a good game plan. But I think that 8 weeks of straight play, I think, was a factor coming into that one as well. And you certainly saw then having a week off the next week and coming home and beating the piss out of Washington. Can I say that? I don't know. Sorry.
Absolutely.
Beating the piss out of them at home.
If you could just save the F-bombs for the first 10 minutes for YouTube. You want to get through the first 10, and then you can, say whatever you want.
All right. So yeah, it was a lot of fun riding that wave. Obviously the way it ended was not how anyone wanted or predicted. There's a lot that's been talked about the way the seeding was done and really was unfavorable. And I've long been a proponent since 3 years ago that I think the bye in this format is a disadvantage. I think all 4 teams who had the bye started slow compared to the teams that had played a couple weeks earlier. I think 4 weeks off is too long to be off. We'll see how that plays out this coming year, but I'm gonna stand by that until proven otherwise. I think a bye if you're off 1 week and you play 2 weeks later, I think it's a huge advantage. I think taking 4 weeks off, I think you get rusty. So
it's almost like a whole new season when you take off. And it's like, normally you could say, at least both teams had to do that. But in this case, both teams didn't have to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a great year, fun year. Obviously, we'll see what happens in year 2. I think Oregon's it's a program that has a lot of talent. They've been recruiting year over year very strongly. This year, I think is really, well, we're going to get into it. So I'll let that come with the questions.
Well, Mike and I were definitely talking about all last season when we were trying to preview and bringing in these new teams like Oregon, Washington, UCLA, and USC into the Big Ten. We said a lot about how we thought that Oregon was going to be the most prepared, and it was very evident that that was the case. So, it's just the talent, it's the coaching staff, it's what's become the tradition there, and having that kind of culture there. So it's sustainable, and you guys have done a great job, and you did pretty much exactly what we were expecting. So
yeah, one thing we are talking about offline, Doug, is that Dan Lanning, what's happened since he took over is that Oregon basically, I would say Oregon was Penn State, and now Oregon is Michigan or Ohio State, somewhere in that range. Like that, they bumped up, and they did it, in a short amount of time. It's been a long build overall building the program, but for Dan Lanning to come in and it to shoot into the stratosphere the way it has, you didn't know if he was going to succeed. He was Kirby Smart's DB's coach, but a lot of people liked him, and you see why. I mean, he's just been fantastic. So speak a little bit to, I think he was on our Big Ten coach rankings. I think we had him, him fourth, third, fourth?
High, yeah, something like that. Top 5, yeah.
Yeah, he's a great coach.
I mean, and that's the conundrum, right? When we do coach ranking every year too. It's fun to do. It's there's no right or wrong answer, right? It's just subjective.
No, ours are right. No.
Okay. Yours are right, but everyone else is subjective. The challenge, I think, is when you're ranking coaches with very short tenures to coaches with very long tenures, right? And then you also have to factor in different circumstances, right? Like 10-2 at Ohio State is very different than 10-2 at Rutgers.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so there's a curve there. And then how do you factor in recruiting versus game day coaching versus culture building versus development, all of these things intertwined versus obviously results on the field. And it's a fun exercise. I kind of take a very data-driven approach to it when I do it. But it is always a challenge of, okay, there's only 2 years of history now, 3 on Dan. How do you, like, obviously 35-6 speaks for itself. They're 36-5, one or the other, incredible record, but a short window. And then how do you compare that to a guy like James Franklin? I think is kind of a good comparison, right? Like
year 15.
Yeah. And they each have one Big Ten title, right? One's done it in 1 year, and one took 15 or did it 10 years ago and hasn't done it since. So it's tough. And there's no necessarily right answer or wrong answer, but I think over time we'll see it. But I always find when you're trying to rank like new coaches in the conference, like you got 3 or 4 new coaches. To me, I just either leave them as unranked or put them at the bottom by default. Like, I think last year I put Sharon Moore, near the bottom, maybe second or third to last, along with, the UCLA coach. It's not that I think he won't rise. He obviously will rise up that list, but I can't put him ahead.
No, but you want to see people prove it.
Yet.
Yeah, you want to see people prove it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to go in depth on the Oregon offense, defense, and the overall schedule and the look, as we do in these previews. But as long as we're talking about coach rankings, let's talk a little bit about SEC Media Days and what some of the coaches had to say about that. So, gentlemen, I know I'm not sure how dialed in either one of you were, but let's talk about just some broad takeaways anyone had from SEC Media Days. And let me start and open it up. I want to get both of your takes on this. Nick Saban, Greg McElroy, former Nick Saban quarterback / ESPN media, pundit and broadcaster, he came out and said that he thought Nick Saban was going to come back into the game, that sometime in the next couple years, he's going to take a job and return to coaching, and that he's not content to just sit on the game day set next to Pat McAfee wondering what he's going to say next, that he wants to coach again. So I got to ask you both, how does that strike you? Do you think realistically, what kind of shot do you think there is that Nick Saban, returns to the sidelines?
Well, I'll start off here. Did you hear the same thing about Urban Meyer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Repeatedly.
Yeah. And I think we're going to hear the same thing with Nick Saban. Not to say it can't happen. I'm not going to obviously rule it out. Anything is, of course, possible. As we know, I think for a lot of these head coaches, especially the ones that have been in the game as long as Saban or Kirk Ferentz or as Urban Meyer was at the time, I think it's hard for them to quit. I'm sure there are those thoughts and those feelings after a couple years out, and you're like, gosh, man, I miss it, or maybe I could do this again. Now rethinking my decision, what have you. I think that's natural. But he's got a pretty sweet deal with what he's doing, and I don't see why he would quit. With where he's at, he may, in my opinion, if this whole college football commission, I'm blanking on the full title of it, but
College Sports Commission.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I don't know if he wants to get involved on the administrative level. I know his name's been thrown out with that kind of stuff when it came to college football as a whole. I know he would definitely be a candidate for that kind of thing, but I don't know. I don't know. He didn't want to deal, in our opinion. I know Mike and I have talked about this for many times about how coaches like him, they don't want to deal with the way the world of how college football is changing with NIL and transfer portal. And
Saban hates parity.
Oh, he hates it. With his inability to have a stranglehold on college football the way he did for as long as he did.
Yeah,
I think that's, in our opinion, I believe, Mike, I think we agree on this, that's part of the reason why he left, is because he no longer could control the all of college football the way that he had been for so long. And I think that scared him. I think it made him uncomfortable. As we have seen now in the last couple of years, 2-3 years, that the parity is now here, and we love it, and we don't want it to go away. And nobody wants a new. Frankly, I don't want another Nick Saban. I'm not saying there won't be dynasties, but I don't want someone who is that dominant over the game as much as he was, for as long as he was.
Hoarding all conference players on his bench like it was his job. It was ridiculous. Anyway, but Doug, what do you think of the Saban thing?
I think I'm all along the lines with you. I mean, I think his daughter came out on social media and kind of poured some cold water on that rumor as well. But I kind of envision this. I agree with you completely. Like, you even saw the last 4 or 5 years as NIL and the portal came in more and more, like that team became less and less dominant, and they were brought back to the pack along with Georgia, along with Ohio State to a degree, right? They all kind of came back to the pack. They're still at the top of the pack, but the gap isn't as big, right? Because of all the reasons we've talked about. I have a hot take on Saban that I've had for a number of years. I think you could make the argument that between 2010 and 2020, or say 20, whenever he won his first one, 2011, 2010, that 10 years, let's say between 2010 and COVID, about a 10-year run, I could make the argument he actually underperformed. It's crazy. I know it. But when you look at like year by year, the number of times that he batted basically 50%, but he had the best team every year.
Right.
I mean, and you look at some of those years when he blew an SEC title game that cost him a chance at the playoffs for the national title, a game in which he was heavily favored. He
lost to a third stringer at Ohio State.
Yeah, that's a good example. There's like 3 or 4 years where, or even losing to those Clemson teams, like those teams are way overmatched, right? Yeah. And I think you can make the argument he should have probably won 2 more titles. Like I would expect him to go 1,000.
Sure.
Again, people think I'm crazy when I make that point, but I think it illustrates the fact that the talent gap was so big that he had, especially before Kirby and Georgia really got rolling and kind of started catching up a little bit, and then Ohio State was kind of in the kind of up and down mode between their coaching changes and where things settled in. And so, I just can't, if he comes back, like he's not going back to Alabama. I mean, that would be the only thing that would make sense, but then everyone's going to expect him to like repeat, the first regime, you can't go home again thing, I think applies there. Does he go back to LSU if they fire Brian Kelly? Those are really the only 2 jobs that make any sense to me, him taking.
I mean, I think I mean, is Bill Belichick going to kind of be the guinea pig in this kind of situation? Like if Bill Belichick finds a way to succeed at North Carolina, does that possibly open a door for Nick Saban to be like, okay, well, if he can make it happen, being a legendary coach like he was in the NFL, then can Nick Saban maybe make a comeback and do the same?
I mean, I don't think Saban cares what Belichick does at all. Like, I don't think Saban doesn't strike me as a guy who spends a lot of time thinking about what his peers do.
True.
I also think, okay, if Belichick is 9-3 at North Carolina, that's successful for North Carolina.
Yes.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're still a million miles away from a national title.
True.
Yeah. The Belichick thing. That's a whole different podcast. All right. Doug, let's go back to you and say, what are any other big takeaways you had from SEC Media Days?
So my initial takeaway, as everyone took the stand, coach after coach after coach, player after player after player, was they all seemed to come equipped with the exact same talking points about what the rigorous, strong, undeniably great, rigor of an SEC schedule is, and 8 games in the SEC is like 12 games anywhere else. I mean, it was like they were all reading from the same script, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, it was ridiculous. And it was, I mean, for Garrett Nussmeier to get up there and say that the SEC is the toughest league, I'm like, you lost to a 6-6 USC team that had a losing Big Ten record. You lost to a Big Ten team that had a losing record in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
What are we talking about? What do you mean it's tougher? How can you say that with a straight face?
Well, and the postseason showed it out too. Look.
Yes.
I
5-1. The Big Ten was against the SEC in the postseason. 5-1.
And I absolutely think that the middle of the SEC runs deeper than the middle of the Big Ten. I do. I think that's fair. I think at the top they're at worst equal. You could make a case the last couple of years, or now at least with these extra teams, that the Big Ten is as strong or even maybe slightly stronger at the top. But I think you get to team 9 or 10. I like the SEC better than the Big Ten. But like this idea that it's like light years ahead is just a joke. It's absurd.
Well, the thing that drives me crazy, though, Doug, about that argument, and here's what I say to people is, when Saban was winning titles at first, nobody argued that the SEC was the deepest league. Nobody said that. They said the SEC was the best league because they had the the biggest juggernaut, and that made them the best league. Yeah. So for the Big Ten now to start winning national titles, now they want to talk about depth. Now the media is really focused on depth so that they can recycle the SEC superiority narrative rather than just acknowledge the world is changing and we have more parity now and the Big Ten is fully the equal and right now the slight superior of the SEC, but they can't bring it themselves to do it. And I understand why like ESPN doesn't do it because they're financially incentivized to do so. Yeah. But man, people from like Fox or CBS or whatever will parrot that same stuff. And I'm like, you sound like chimpanzees. Like, I just don't understand what you're even talking about. That was never the argument. And they all just parrot it and say it like it's, they thought of something.
Well, I spent like 15 years clowning on all these SEC programs who are like chanting SEC as they go 7-5 and watch Bama or somebody like win a national title. And I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, I will never chant Big Ten. Sorry, Big Ten. I love you all as rivals. I'm never going to cheer for you. Like, if you're, not never, if Ohio State's playing Alabama, I'm probably going to cheer for Ohio State, but like, I'm not rooting for Ohio State to win a national title. I'm not rooting for any of these teams. I'm not, or I guess the better way to put it is if they do, I'm not claiming that as some sort of victory for Oregon.
Yes.
We didn't win shit. We went 7-5.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, that's completely fair. And I think the thing about the Big Ten is we've been in this conference with each other so long, most of us, that we hate each other and don't want each other to succeed.
Right.
I never want Michigan to win ever because the little brown jug. Like I hope Michigan loses every game, and that's not even one of our top 3 rivals. But I still hate that. There is that animosity there because of the shared history.
Well,
I think the West Coast schools need to like do some consulting and get some of these old Big Ten schools to like come up with some really cool trophies and rivalry names for our because Oregon, Washington, very hated rivalry. We don't have a title and we don't have a trophy.
Yeah.
USC, UCLA obviously is a long-standing rivalry. I don't know if they have a name or a trophy. I think they might have a trophy, but in Oregon, USC is kind of, I wouldn't say it's a rivalry, but there's a lot of animosity between the two fan bases over the last couple decades.
The thing is, the Big Ten has tried to force trophies, and when you force a trophy, it almost never works.
True.
It doesn't catch on. Like they tried to give us a game with Penn State and Penn State a game with Michigan State. And like none of that caught on because it didn't happen organically.
Yeah.
The little brown jug became the little brown jug because they were actually worried we were going to poison their water. Legitimately. So
I love that stuff.
So they brought their own and we after that wouldn't give it back. Like I think the best modern example was Minnesota, Nebraska with the Bits of Broken Chairs trophy, which started as a Twitter war between Goldie Gopher and Faux Pelini when
That's
he was
funny.
a thing with Nebraska. So like, I feel like you'll know it when you see it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like something's going to happen. Like maybe the next time Washington wins, if they ever do beat you again, maybe they rip the goalpost down and try to take it or something. And then that becomes, you know what I mean? And then and there's an incident and something's got to happen organically to spur, I feel like, a trophy.
And it has to be fan made. This really has to come from the fans. That's where, again, like the $5 bits of broken chair came from the fans. The fans created it and literally built an actual trophy. And so even though it's not officially recognized by the Big Ten, which you should be officially recognizing it.
Seriously.
Because we want a 5th trophy game, goddammit. You know? So, because we don't have enough. Minnesota, no, we need more. But yeah, I think that's the beauty of it. And when you look at a lot of the history here, and then there's so much history out west as well with these squads. And I think something will happen. I think there's going to be something that'll take place. It could take 5, 10, 15 years, but I think something will come about. But if you don't mind, kind of trailing back to the SEC, media days though is like, which essentially it was a giant propaganda. It was all propaganda. That's all it was. And to me, what's been so telling over the last few months, with Greg Sankey, a couple of months ago, just going on this whole national media, blitz of talking about the 9th conference game, the college football playoff. Which I will give him credit that he has now come out twice publicly saying that he is in favor of a 9th conference game because they should be. It's the coaches that are scared, that are terrified of that. And also the fans, obviously, don't want that because I don't think they could stomach or understand how to cope having another loss on their schedule. And so to me, what it is like the loudest person in the room is generally the most insecure. And I know there's a lot of criticism over Tony Petitti, which like I will absolutely criticize him. We have, as far as like his being totally silent. I think he does need to come out and be a little bit more of a spokesperson. And, for the Big Ten, it's not that he has to give some kind of, giant retort and put down the SEC or Greg Sankey or anything like that. But I wanted him to say a little bit more. Now he did on Joel Klatt not too long ago. And obviously we're going to hear a lot more from him, or at least we expect to, at Big Ten Media Days. So we'll see what he has to say there. But, I want to be harder on him, and I know some people are, and maybe that's justified. But like I said, in my life experience, the person who is the biggest blowhard, who is peacocking the most, who has to constantly remind everybody how great and wonderful they are and how strong and smart and whatever that they are, is usually the most insecure, weak person in the room, because they are scared. They are afraid of what is coming and they don't know how to handle it. And so therefore they have to try to remind people and give this facade, this fake persona, that they are somehow better than what they really are. And that's what I see at SEC Media Days. And you're right. Like, it's like everyone had the same script essentially. And for that, and to me, that also says like they were told
it was a coordinated effort.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so therefore, if that's a coordinated effort that they have to make sure everyone's in one way, shape, or form has to talk about this, then you are terrified of.
You've lost the narrative. You've lost control of the narrative fully.
I think the thing Petitti needs is what Sankey has, which is as soon as he says something, 75% of the college football media is immediately parroting and trumpeting and like clapping it. They think Greg Sankey is like the second coming of Christ for college football. And I'm like, you guys, Sankey's good at what he does, no doubt. But like, he has an agenda. He has a bias. He has he's driving to, and so is Petitti. And so but let's call it what it is. Don't sit there and think he's altruistic and he's looking out for the best interests of college football. No, he's not. Yep. He's looking out for the best interest of the SEC because that's his job. Yep. And as media people, can we have some freaking honesty about it? Can we call it what it is?
Yeah.
And if we're not going to do that, then let's get some people, pro Big Ten media people, that at least will do the same thing for Petitti and the points of views of the Big Ten. And going back to these coaches a little bit, it's clear to me two things: these SEC coaches are afraid, and they run the show, because up until a couple months ago, Sankey and the athletic directors and the presidents of these SEC schools had a majority that were on board the 4-4-2-2-1-1 model. That was all steam ahead. Every reporting indicated that was all but done.
Right.
And then they walked into the coaches' meetings in Destin, and all these coaches threw a whiny fit about how they can't do that. They can't do that. We gotta stay at 8 because that required going to 9 conference games. We got to stay at 8 conference games because we got to have our 8 home games. We got to have 8 home, 4 road, or 8 3-1, like some teams have. We got to have our guaranteed 4 patsies so we can go 2-6 in conference and make a bowl game and get our contract renewed. And I'm not talking about all of them. Who was the one that came out this week? It was like all on board. The more playout, it was kind of made a joke.
Mizzou. Yeah, Mizzou.
Yeah.
Big
Right.
ones, yeah.
So, like, at least I'll give that guy credit. Okay, he's not afraid. I know there's a couple. I know the team that usually, like, Saban was on board 9. Like, the team, the better coaches, I think, are on board with it. They're fine with it.
Yeah.
It's all these, like, Mississippi States. Ole Miss is a good example. There's Ole Miss engineers the cream puff schedule every single year, right? Every year they have the cream puff schedule. They got their 4 out of conference home patsies, and they set themselves up for the most success possible. So it's all these like bottom of the middle and bottom of the bottom SEC coaches who are absolutely running the show and voting in a block to basically prevent any kind of progress in this sport, right? And thank God that it seems to be the Big Ten is not going to give in on this thing because you cannot give the SEC 8 conference games, 5 + 11, and their wish to get strength of schedule being
they'll get 7 teams in the playoff. It'll be ridiculous.
You cannot do that.
SEC tournament.
No, if you're going to give in eventually on 5-11, it has to be with 9 SEC conference games, or you just stay 12.
Because otherwise, and I want the media to be honest, it's just math. It's just math, and right now the Big Ten is taking 9 extra conference losses than the SEC, and that distorts how people think of it. And it
distorts all the rankings, which then distort all the like wins against top 25 opponent. Everything it distorts all your strength of schedule.
Yep.
Which is, by the way, strength of schedule is the wrong metric. We should be looking at strength of record.
Yep.
But it also depends on how you calculate it. Right? There's no like agreed upon formula for either of those metrics. So
not now that Bill Connolly went to ESPN. There's not.
Yeah. And then FPI, like, come on, can we
FPI is a
can we throw that out, please? Nobody should be
using
FPI for anything.
Yep. Yeah, it's and also to have the gall to basically say we want to use ESPN analytics to help basically like rank teams and all, like, oh yeah, sure, ESPN is the one we should trust to rank everybody in college football. Like, yeah,
because we know the FBI has really worked out over the years.
Yeah.
I just find it very interesting to hear that people and Yormark is the other one, Yorkie, I call him, Yappy Yorkie over there in the Big 12, like constantly, sounding off about this stuff too. First, he's advocating for something that's worse for his league, but it's whatever. But secondly, everyone's like, win it on the field, win it on the field, win it on the field. Okay, 5-11 is not winning it on the field. It's having a secret boardroom meeting and whose propaganda is best for those 11 spots. If you actually go with the Big Ten model, 100% of at least 13 teams, 14 if Notre Dame is in the top 12, 14 of the 16 spots would be decided only on football results, nothing else. Every single 14 of 16 spots will be decided on whether you won or lost games on the field and nothing else. That is winning it on the field. It's the definition of winning it on the field.
Yep.
And
it's just insanity to me how someone can claim that isn't, and yet the 5-11 is somehow winning it on the field. No, it's a subjective propaganda war in a secret boardroom. What are we doing?
Yeah. Completely with you. And I'm fine with them keeping it at 12 until the Big Ten can get the SEC to, be reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we got to compromise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I from the speculation from people that I feel that I trust anyways, is like they are going to go to 9. It's just they were like Sankey's just doing everything he can to get these coaches on board and these ADs as well, because the ADs are also dragging their feet. So
yeah, they don't want to get fired either.
Yeah, so
just people who don't want to get fired. That's it.
Yeah,
they're going to make way more money.
I get it, but you're going to get so much more money. Like
so much more money. You'll have that golden parachute.
It makes no sense why you wouldn't be in favor of this. But then again, we've been doing it for a while now at 9.
Yeah.
And I love the argument too, like, why don't you just go down to 8? It's like, no, we are going to lose money. Why would we?
And also,
lose
we
money?
never play each other ever.
But no one wants to see more games against G5 teams.
No, we want to see more teams against each other.
Now, the separation between the 4 conferences and the lower 6 is getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Those games already are hard to sell. People aren't interested in them. They're mostly blowouts. We want more of those? No, we want less of those. People want more. The other thing about the AQ model, you can have better out-of-conference games too in that model because the loss doesn't hurt your chances of making the playoff, right? But
exactly, yeah.
People want better games. They don't want worse games. Like even the SEC schools complain all the time about having a hard time getting people to come for those crappy games. So we want more of them. Why? No, nobody wants.
Oh yeah, every year there's at least one game where we have a half-filled stadium just because it's like an FCS team and nobody cares.
Yep.
Yeah, or you come for a quarter and then leave or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Leave at halftime.
The students leave at halftime, kind of thing.
Well, that's enough of that. I'm getting too angry and worked up here talking about the stuff and really appreciate all that. But we're going to move in and transition into the Oregon breakdown. But before we do that, I wanted, as always, talk about where you can find We Live for Saturday. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Podcast Addict. You can find us on Twitter at We Live for B1GSat. You can find Mike here at Alibaba26 and me, John, at Norwegian Gopher. And you can email us, We Live for Saturday, b1g@gmail.com. And we will also have Doug repeat where you can find him and all of that at the end of the podcast. Did you already do that or no?
I didn't.
Oh, then please go for it. Go right
ahead. So
ahead.
at QB11 Show on Twitter, or you can find me at Douglas TS on Twitter as well, or X, however you like to call it. I still call it Twitter.
I call it Twitter always.
Our show is the QB11 Show. We cover Oregon football and the Big Ten as well. It's those two things primarily. Also, all of college football at large when there's things to cover there. So it's at QB11 Show. Yeah, we find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all your platforms wherever you're looking for that.
Wonderful, awesome,
cool.
All
right, cool. John, should I turn it over to you to talk offense?
Yeah, we're going to break down offense here a little bit. I got some questions to ask you. We're going to talk about, quarterback, running back, all that kind of stuff and see where we're at. Obviously, last year, very successful. You had one of the most electric offenses in college football. It was so much fun to watch. You had Tez Johnson, you had Dylan Gabriel, you had a very good running game. It was nearly impossible to stop for most teams. And like you said, unless they were just tired and it was a long 8-game stretch, it was amazing. It was really amazing to watch. But this year there's some change here. There's some change obviously at the quarterback position. There's some new key players coming in. So, we're going to kind of run down that. And obviously, just to start out here, we have, I assume Dante Moore, who's the likely starter, in offensive coordinator Will Stein's offense. He's a redshirt sophomore. He sat behind Gabriel last year, and he flashed some accuracy and good field vision, I think, during garbage time opportunities. I expect a safe, efficient style to begin the season, but increase that aggression, as his comfort grows. So can you tell me what to expect, what you think with Dante Moore? Obviously, he's a highly touted recruit, a lot of talent.
Yeah, obviously, Oregon's had a top 5 offense the last 3 years. The first one under Kenny Dillingham, and then the last 2, of course, under offensive coordinator Will Stein. Will likes to describe his offense as feed the studs, right? So his idea is let's get the ball out quick to our playmakers in space and let them make plays, whether that's in the running game, passing game, screen game, a lot of RPOs, those kind of things. They will take shots down the field. He stated he likes to take 1 or 2 a quarter. I think what we haven't seen as much of that, especially this past year under Gabriel. I think there's some reasons for that. Gabriel's height is an issue seen over the line at times, and also just the arm strength and the arm talent he had was not necessarily conducive to that style of play, but it was very efficient and very successful in doing what they do best. I think if you're looking to, obviously, Bo Nix, 2 years of Bo Nix and then a year of Dylan Gabriel, you're talking about the 2 quarterbacks who have played more football games than any other quarterbacks in the history of college football. So you're now moving from 2 guys who have played 60 games to a guy who played 6 at UCLA, I think 5 or 6, or Austin Novosad, the other contender there, who's will be in his 3rd year at Oregon. He's a redshirt sophomore, who hasn't really played much at all outside of a couple of mop-up duty snaps here and there. I think either one of those guys can win football games for Oregon. Obviously, Dante Moore is the former 5-star, was committed to Oregon in that class, flipped late when Kenny Dillingham left to become the head coach at Arizona State. He flipped to UCLA late, played his first season there, started about half the games, then transferred over to Oregon, sat all last year, and is now ready to take the reins. I do believe he will be the starter. Obviously, the experience is the lack of experience compared to the last 2 quarterbacks is the big question mark going into the season. The talent is there. Whether he can put it all together, a lot of new weapons on offense as well. It's not just breaking in a new quarterback. Much of the offense will be new. I think 4 out of the 5 offensive line starters will be new. Only the center will be returning, maybe the right guard too, depending on who ends up starting there. Good return in the back. I just want to talk about quarterbacks. So we'll start with Dante. Yeah. So incredible deep ball thrower, a lot of touch, arm talent is NFL, ready. He can make every throw in the book. He's shown that at times in practice, in spring ball, in limited action, even in UCLA. You saw when there were some throws he thought like, oh wow, that as a freshman, as a true freshman at UCLA, like, okay, that's an NFL throw. And then you throw a pick 6 a couple plays later, right? So obviously you'd hope a couple of years later with a lot of practice and a lot of snaps behind him and coaching and some better coaching at Oregon than he had at UCLA, to be frank. You'd hope to see that maybe he's moved beyond some of those mistakes and now he's more mature and more, but he's still got to see it on the field, right? He's still got to play in real games and he's got to put it all together. So I think what you said is Oregon has a pretty nice lead in up to that Penn State game, week 5. So they should be able to kind of like ease him into things, get some leads, get him comfortable, make some easy throws. And I think this offense too is catered for easy throws, right? You'll put some challenging throws on him too, for sure. But I think the idea is like Will would want to warm him up with some easy throws, some RPOs, some quick slants, some quick game stuff that Oregon is really, really good at. And that kind of make it easy for him to start.
Let's not gloss over the fact that Doug just took a shot at Chip Kelly. It was in an even tone, so you might have missed it. But he basically said that Chip Kelly is not as good as Will Stein at developing quarterbacks.
Not at quarterback.
So that's
shots if you
fired.
want a running game, Chip Kelly is your man, but he's never been strong with the quarterback play, in my opinion.
Well, since you kind of mentioned a little bit about the offensive line, let's just go there and we'll hit the running backs after that. But so, with the offensive line, it's a patchwork of transfers and returners this year. You have center
Poncho. Just call him Poncho.
Poncho. Thank you. Okay. He's the only returning starter, but then you got offensive, you got transfers, including Emmanuel Pregnon from USC, Isaiah World, who I've heard really good things about, Alex Harkey, Fox Crater, and with Harkey highlighted for strong run blocking and needed improvement, but he needs some improvement in the pass sets. But I think I assume cohesion is going to be key, and so after bringing in several transfers, how well do you expect the line to gel before kickoff, and what matchups will be key in testing them early?
Yeah, to me, that's question 1A, 1B, right? Dante Moore's 1A, offensive line's 1B, right? Let's start from left to right. Isaiah World will be the left tackle, almost assuredly. He's a transfer from Nevada, has an NFL body, right? Has flash potential, but he played at Nevada, and they don't have a great coaching staff there. They have a terrible nutrition program, strength and conditioning program. They're all under where they should be, even for a G6 level school. So that's the thing that I think Oregon has really been focused on with him getting him on campus is let's get his body right, let's get his nutrition right, let's get his technique right. Do I expect him to be Josh Connerly level? Absolutely not, right? That's going to be a step down from last year. What you need is a guy who's competent, right? Can he excel in the run game? Can he hold his own in the pass game? You're going to get beat. Don't get beat 5 times a game, right? If you can limit that to 1 or 2, or you cover for it with a back chipping or some other blocking scheme, okay, fine, right? So you just need him to be above average. You don't need him to be elite. Right. Anything above average is you're getting a bonus for. Pregnon will be the left guard. He started the last 2 years at USC. I think that's a plug and play. I think it's probably an upgrade over the guy they had playing left guard last year, Harper. So I anticipate no issues there at all. Poncho's back at center. He also was hurt going into last season, so he's in better shape this year. Another year older. Expect him to be be at playing that position at a high level. I'm going to come back to right guard real quick. So we'll go. I think the starting right tackle will be Alex Harkey, the transfer up from Texas, either North Texas or Texas State. I always get those two confused. I think he's going to be a surprise to people. I think he's really good technique wise. Obviously playing at a higher level, but I think he's a guy who's going to be probably pretty close to on par with Oregon's right tackle last year, Johnny Cornelius, who ended up going to the NFL. I think late 6th, 7th round draft pick to the NFL. So I think expect similar play out of him. Probably a little bit better in pass blocking, maybe not quite as good in run blocking. Mm-hmm. And then right guard is probably either going to be the former Indiana transfer, Bedford, who transferred over a year ago and then was hurt most of last season, didn't play, or Dave Ayuli, who's an original Oregon commit back in 2022 and has played kind of sparingly over the years. He was also hurt the year before last, rounded into shape late last year and got a lot of snaps down the stretch when the other right guard went down later in the year. So he's got some good experience. One of those two will probably be the starter at right guard. Mm-hmm. I expect the line. I think between the coaching and the gelling and things like last year, they kind of came into the beginning of the season. They really struggled the first 2 games of the year against FCS Idaho State and then obviously Boise State in the second game. They were mixing and matching different lineups on the offensive line in those first 2 games, and they really struggled. They had some injuries, and they were trying some different things out. And then they kind of late in the Boise game, they kind of figured out the right placement, and then that's kind of the unit they ran with the rest of the year until they had a later injury, as I mentioned. And I'm hoping that they don't take that 2 games this year to do the same, right? I think this year the lineup is probably going to be more solidified in fall camp. Their starting 5 will be known, and it'll probably hit the ground running in week 1. So they need to build cohesion. They need to build consistency together. And I hope we'll see that over the first 4 games as we head into Penn State, right? So it's a question mark, though, like how well is it all going to come together, for sure.
Yeah, it's always a little nerve-wracking when you've got so much turnover on the offensive line, especially in the Big Ten. It's always it makes me a little nervous when you see that. But now we're gonna moving on to the running backs. We got Mekhi Hughes. He's a junior transfer from Tulane. He's an explosive threat. He's rushed for 2,779 career yards, 5.3 yards per carry, and was first team all AAC pick. He should be the workhorse, many touches. I think he's got a big play upside. And then you got Noah Whittington coming back. He's going to complement Hughes. He's a reliable 3rd down scat back, and he can also catch the ball pretty well. So, with Mekhi Hughes joining, what style of run game should we anticipate? Like, will we see 20 plus touches per game? What are we going to look at here?
It hasn't been what Oregon's done over the last several years. Running back coach Rashad Samples is in his 2nd year now. It was the first year last year, coming over from, I don't remember. Arizona State, maybe? Anyway, so what we've seen is more of a, 1A, 1B a little bit, I think, especially under previous coach Laughlin, who's now at Ohio State, right? There was very much a 1A, 1B with Bucky Irving and Noah Whittington for a couple of years. And then last year, I think the lead back, Jordan James, last year got a little bit more of the workload, especially when Noah got hurt and was out part of the year last year too. So I think we'll probably see a little bit more of that. Well, at 20 is probably a little high. It'll probably be like upper teens, I think, for Mekhi. And then there's the room behind him is really deep. I mean, they returned everyone else from last year other than Jordan James, who went to the NFL. And so you kind of look at Mekhi Hughes, Jordan kind of plug and play, replaces Jordan James as the lead back. You got Noah Whittington. You've got a couple of young guys who are really you got Jay Harris, I think was a D2 transfer a couple of years ago, kind of a more of a big, strong kind of downhill back, will probably be very sparingly used. You've got a couple of true freshmen, D.R. Hill and who's like lightning fast speed back. And then you've got Jordan Davison out of Mater Dei in Southern California, who's really flashed in the spring when I saw him in spring practice, and I think he didn't play the spring game, but leading into the spring game was really quite impressive to watch in the practices leading up to that. So there's a lot of talent there in the room. So I think they run really deep if they need to, but I would expect they're probably going to be 3 backs that will play primarily with Noah and Mackay, and why am I blanking on who I think the third back will be? I need to pull up the roster, I guess. I think the third one will probably get spot duty.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I expect there to be speed there. I expect there to be the ability to also, catch the ball. That just seems to be something that's worked well with Oregon through the years and that offense. And talking about catching the ball, wide receivers and tight ends. The receiver room is young, and so there's some transfers in there as well. You got freshman Decorian Moore, top ranked 2025 wide receiver. I expect to see early involvement. I think there's some upperclassmen there. There's Justice Lowe, 21 catches in 2024, and other returners like Jurion Dickey, Kyler Casper, Malik Benson, and Gary Bryant like to add that depth. Portal additions you got Hudson from USC, you got Ross from Troy, and Pena from Syracuse to provide like experience in that mix as well. So who do you think is going to show up, and who's the next Tez Johnson? Let's see.
Did we slip into a Penn State preview?
Well, first of all, let me go back. It's DeJuan Riggs, otherwise known as Dink, is the third running back. So I can't believe I forgot him.
There we go.
Dink, I think, will be the third running back, and he's a guy that I think a lot of people are gonna become to know here in the next couple of years. So pretty excited about him. Anyway, yeah, back on the wide receiver. Obviously, Evan Stewart going down to injury this spring was a big blow, at least from the standpoint of who we know who has contributed right in the past. Right, it's a very inexperienced room right now, but it's an incredibly talented room. I think Decorian Moore, number one wide receiver recruit in the last class, true freshman coming in. He's going to be a major contributor day one. He will be, I don't know if he'll be wide receiver one, but I think he'll be one of the focal points of the wide receiver room. He'll get a lot of run, and he'll be a big time contributor. He's that guy. He's definitely got that kind of ability to flash from early on. I think you go around the rest of the room, and it's like a collection of freshmen, sophomores, redshirt sophomores who really haven't played a whole lot. I mean, you mentioned Justice Lowe played a bit last year when covering for some injuries. He's at the safe floor, I would say. He's not the most dynamic playmaker, but he plays above his talent level, and he's very consistent. He's one of the better blockers in the room too, which I think is oftentimes an overlooked attribute of wide receivers when it comes to your running game. So other than that, you got Kyler Casper, who's a huge body, 6'6" guy, very tall. Was kind of getting some early run last season before going down with injury. So he's kind of back. I think this is year 3 or 4 for him. He hasn't played a lot, but he presents a different kind of matchup and a different kind of a body and skill set than a lot of other guys in the room. So he'll be in the running there. You mentioned Gary Bryant Jr., the former USC player. He's flashed, in his year or two at Oregon now. Whether, he can be a consistent playmaker. Also missed that's okay. Also missed a lot of a time last year with some injury as well. So there's opportunity there. So those are the veteran guys in the room. And then I'll mention Malik Benson, the transfer from Florida State, more of a speedster, another veteran guy in the room. Again, hasn't been a big contributor in his previous stops, but it will be vying for time. And then you go to the younger guys, right? You got Dylan Gresham, and you've got a guy like J-Mac. J-Mac's another one. So those two kind of redshirt freshmen now, right? They've been in the program for a year. There's entering year 2. They're both Gresham flashed quite a bit in the spring game. J-Mac had a really good spring, not in the game itself, but leading up to that. So those are two guys, Jeremiah McClellan, those are two guys that could pick up and take a spot from the younger side of things. And then another true freshman, Cooper Perry, really flashed in the spring as well too. So he's a guy that could compete for some reps. So the way I talk about it with my Oregon fans is, I don't know who's going to step up, but there's a big pool of people that are capable of it, and you don't need them all to do it. You just need 2 or 3 of them to do it. So do I expect that out of all those guys we just talked about, that 2 or 3 of those guys are going to be able to step up and be like, plus Big Ten receivers? Yeah, I do. I just couldn't tell you which 2 or 3 it is outside of Dak. Dak Moore will be one of them. For sure. All right.
Nice. Yeah, I expect somebody is as well. There's just like you said, there's so much talent there, especially in the receiver room. So, but and now talk about the big guy here. Like, let's talk about a little bit of Kenyon Sadiq. Is he poised for a big year? He had 24 catches, 308 yards, 2 TDs in 2024. He definitely offers a mismatch. He's a mismatch weapon, I should say. And then, he's shown some flashes, but can he become that go-to threat, or is he like more of a complementary role? What do you think he's going to do?
I mean, I don't think Oregon's ever going to have a Brock Bowers kind of tight end or like Penn State last year with their guy, right? He's going to like just feed the tight end. It's not the offense that we run, right? I think you look at what Terrence Ferguson did, the last couple of years as the tight end one, right? I think catching 40 balls, 7 or 8 touchdowns. Yeah, maybe not quite that many, but somewhere in that range of probably what we're looking for from a tight end one. I think Caden Sadiq is certainly, like you said, a matchup nightmare. The guy is incredibly fast. He has almost wide receiver speed in a tight end body. He's also a really good blocker, an inline blocker, a lot better than people give him credit for. I think just being behind Ferguson the last couple of years has kind of limited his. I thought he was going to have a bigger role last year. To be honest, I was a little bit surprised it wasn't bigger at times. But it just Oregon plays a lot of 2 tight end sets. Just they were trying to feed him the ball a lot last year and like tight end arounds and things like that just to get him plays, and they were moderately successful at times. But I expect now that he's kind of tight end one, I think we'll see him a lot more down in the downfield passing game, which I think is a huge opportunity. You saw what he could do in the Big Ten title game against Penn State with those 2 early touchdowns in that game that kind of set the tone. And I think you're obviously not going to expect that every game, but I expect to see more of that consistently throughout the season. And then, we brought in Jamari Johnson from Louisville as kind of the other tight end. And that was a guy that Oregon almost landed, in the initial recruitment out of high school, but got him on the portal a couple of years later. And I think that's a guy that also will contribute this year. And Oregon runs a lot of 2 tight end sets, so they'll both be on the field a lot. And I think that's a guy that can contribute in the passing game as well as in the run game too.
So overall, obviously, Oregon's offense was pretty fantastic last year. How would you, in just a brief little summary, how would you compare the two?
I mean, I would expect it to take a step back this year, right? Like there's just a lot less known, right? There's a lot, starting at quarterback, right? Now they were, I don't know, number 2 or number 3 in the country last year, depending on which system you like to use to rank your offenses. If you tell me you use total yards, I'm hanging up right now. That should never be used as a ranking metric by anybody. But in most advanced metrics, they're thinking we're in the top 2, top 3, and then number 1, I know the year before. So I expect them to still be top 10, top 15 range. I think just the style of play and the talent they have should allow for that. And if they're, better than 10, if they're still in the top 5 or top 7, then I think we're really, that's optimal. That means to me everything kind of went the way you wanted it to go and things are humming. So I would say, I'd say top 10, top 15 range is probably what I'd hope for.
Great. Yeah. And again, yeah, sorry, I totally I messed up and accidentally put a few Penn State transfers on there. Thank you, Mike, for pointing that out. I was copying, pasting a couple things from some of my notes, and that must have snuck on there. So
well, there was a lot of Oregon fans who were lobbying for Oregon to get Pena because we got the wide receiver coach from Syracuse came over to be our new wide receiver coach at Oregon this year. Douglas. So there was a lot of people thinking that when Pena hit the portal that he was just going to be here, and a lot of people calling for it. But obviously that didn't happen.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. John, are you done?
Yeah, I'm all good.
All right, before we switch to defense, I just wanted to ask quickly. So, people talk about Dante Moore a lot, and rightfully so. But from everything I've read and heard, Austin Novosad has really impressed the coaches.
Yes.
How badly would Dante Moore have to play for Austin Novosad to get a shot?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that, to be honest. I think they're closer than people think, right? Like I think what I've heard from people is that Dante Moore shows more upside, but Novosad might be more consistent. And
Sure.
Particularly if a play breaks down, that Novosad has handled those play breakdowns and more consistently better than Dante has. So what I don't think you're going to see is a situation where Oregon's just jerking them around, right? Like, oh, you had a bad quarter, we're pulling you, right? That's not going to happen. Right. I mean, they're going to, whoever they pick to be the starter, we're going to assume Dante is going to have a pretty long leash, right? Okay. Now, if Oregon starts 2-3 or 3-2 and he's throwing interceptions all over the place, then who knows, right? Then I think, okay, maybe you do give the other guy a shot. But I think it's going to have to take a consistent, a multiple game, poor performance, consistently before any change is made would be my guess.
Right on. Cool. All right. Well, let's switch over then and talk some defense, which I, being the defensive guy, I think we all come back to what we did in relation to football. And so like defense is very close to my heart as a former defensive player. So I want to talk a little bit about Tosh Lapoy as defensive coordinator. So played for Cal as a D lineman, coached at Cal, Washington, Alabama under Saban, had multiple roles there. Cleveland Browns, Falcons, Jaguars, then returned to Oregon as DC and linebackers coach in 2022. Now, obviously, Dan Lanning's a defensive head coach, so Tosh Lapoy is not the only guy calling the shots here. That said, he's gotten really good results under Lanning's tutelage. How do you feel about Tosh Lapoy and where he's at?
Yeah, I mean, that's a polarizing question in the Oregon fan base, because there's some that would love to, like, they don't think he's a very good defensive coordinator, and they would love to run him out. There's others that disagree. I'm probably somewhere in the middle, which is usually a good place to be, right? I think he's an exceptional recruiter. He's an exceptional developer. Like, in the position he's coaching, like, he's really, really good. You can sit there and watch him in practices, and like the way he engages with players and coaches and teaches them technique, it's really impressive. So, calling plays on game day, I don't know. It's so hard to know, because you have Coach Chris Hampton, who's the DB's coach, who is also intimately involved. It's definitely and this is true on the offensive side of the ball too, a little less so probably, but especially on the defensive side of the ball between Dan and Tosh and Hampton, there's a lot of collaboration. You think about throughout the week, they're building the game plan, collectively, along with the rest of the defensive staff. When the plays are being called on game day, is Tosh calling every play? Is Tosh calling the front and Hampton calling the back end? Are they discussing it on the headphone? And then I don't know. Nobody knows, right? So it's all discussing. All I got to do is say, like, the results are good. So I'm going to roll with that until I have reason not to roll with that, right? And I think this defense has gotten better every year under Lanning. And the crazy thing is, and this is true on both sides of the ball, but particularly on defense, one of the things that when Lanning got here that he did is he turned over the entire roster. Like, last year's team only had 7 players on it that were recruited by Mario Cristobal.
Oh, wow.
And the year before was only 13. So there was a lot of, you hear all Miami fans talk all the time, oh, Lanning's winning with Mario's players. And it's actually not true. There was very few Mario players, even in year 2 of Lanning, but certainly not in year 3. So, but what they did was they completely turned over the roster in recruiting, in high school recruiting over the last 3 cycles. But at the same time, they were bringing in transfers to start and replace the kind of missing upperclassmen who either had left the program or were kind of pushed out because they weren't where they wanted them to be. So that's how Oregon was able to kind of go through a coaching change, but still win at a very high level those first 3 years under Lanning, is because they were bringing transfers to be the starters while they were recruiting and developing freshmen to kind of be the next wave, right? And this year, we talked a little bit about it on offense, even especially the wide receiver position, but even more so on defense. This is the year where we're pivoting from a defense dominated by transfers to a defense dominated by homegrown talent. And so it's really going to tell the tale on how well they've been recruiting and developing all these young blue chips, but also then, how that's going to then work going forward. I could not be more excited about this defensive roster and the young guys that are going to take the field this year that haven't really played much at all over the last couple of years. Now they're redshirt sophomores, redshirt freshmen, some true freshmen are going to play big roles this year. And they're obviously not as experienced as some of the transfers. Like, you think about the defensive backs, all 5 defensive backs last year were transfers. They were all very experienced players and they played well. They were also pretty much all 3 stars with a limit to their physical ability, right? That's why they were a 3-star. Not that they're not a good player. They're a great player. They're great college players. But you're talking about the difference between when you're talking about high 3 stars versus high 4 stars, 5 stars, you're talking about physical differences, right? We're not talking about heart. We're not talking about skill. We're talking about literally physical athleticism, people that have NFL attributes and people that don't, for the most part. And so I think that's what that's what excites me about the defense this year coming into it. So I know I've kind of rambled a lot on your initial question. So, but I think we're going to see this year that pivot point between the transfers and the high school kids, and we're going to see how well not just Tosh but also the rest of the defensive staff have developed these guys over the last couple of years.
Yeah, you took that question right out of my mouth, so I appreciate that. Oregon last year, I'm struck by the fact that now Oregon ranks 16th in the country in points allowed, which is, and some of that's a function of you score a lot of points, then the other team gets a lot of possessions. But I think it's also safe to say that's probably not at the level that Lanning expects coming from his background as Kirby Smart's right-hand man at Georgia. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see now, like you said, with homegrown talent, can Lanning field that top 10 kind of unit, that top 5 or 10 sort of defensive unit. But let's get into talking personnel. Oregon lost big time players, including D lineman Derek Harmon, linebacker Jeffrey Bassa, cornerback Jabbar Muhammad from last year's team. D-line is always a key when it comes to how you will fare in Big Ten play. Oregon was very good last year. They should be very good this year. However, it seems like the strength of this defense will be the edge rushers this year with Mateo Uagalele and Tatum Tuioti. I feel like that's as good a defensive end combo as you'll have in the entire country. Now, my question is, does Tuioti play on the edge full time or just on passing downs? And does he also play linebacker sometimes, which is where he's listed? Like, what is his role going to be like?
Yeah, edge players, outside linebackers, depending on your system and your defense, it's all a little fungible, right? So in Oregon's system, I think we sometimes list him as an outside linebacker, but it's typically kind of that overhang, rush linebacker position, right? So he does go into pass coverage sometimes. Let me answer your question a slightly different way. Let's start talking. If we don't want to talk about edge rushers, Mateo's the guy, right? So he's going to be your 3 down. He's really good at setting the edge. His pass rushing has come on. He led the Big Ten last year in sacks, actually 10.5. So he's obviously the star power there. Tuioti's more of a run stopper. His pass rush is good. I would say not elite, but there's a couple of younger guys coming on that I think we're going to see a lot more of. So I think you're going to see situational. So you're going to see a lot of rotations here, right? Because let's start with former 5-star or 5-star Elijah Rushing. So he's a guy that now is entering year 2, redshirt freshman season, redshirt last year. He's going to have a role in this defense for sure. He's kind of the heir apparent there, and I think he's going to play a big role, particularly in the pass rush game. But I think you'll see him rotating in on standard downs too. Another one, Blake Purchase. So he actually was a highly ranked recruit out of Colorado in the previous class, the 2023 class. Played his true freshman year 2023 alongside other true freshmen Tuioti and Mateo Uiagalele. And then redshirted his second year, not injured. Just it was a decision that he and the coaching staff together made to create more playing time and more class separation. And so it really unusually redshirted last year. He's going to be a factor again this year. And he's more of a pass rusher than Tuioti in my mind. So I think you're going to see Blake Purchase play a lot and those passing downs. And then you've got a true freshman, Nasir Wyatt, who's just a true speed rusher, right? Like he's going to be a very situational player, but maybe 5 to 10 snaps a game in the right package, in the right situation, he could be a guy you see line up just as a speed rusher guy. So I think you're going to see those guys. And then, I mean, there's more. I just don't know how they're going to get all the snaps. Ashton Porter is another one that's coming on. So there's a lot of guys who I think are able to contribute there, but I those first 4 would be the ones that I would focus on primarily at that kind of edge rusher outside linebacker position.
Awesome. That breaks down great. And then when we're talking about defensive tackle, I feel like there's more question marks. So this is going to be a little bit of a wind up.
Okay.
They need guys like Amari Washington and Bear Alexander to step up as, people who will be productive with starter level snaps. It sounds like Tion Gray and Terrence Green will also compete for snaps. So my question for you, can Bear Alexander actually use his God-given abilities to be a consistent player? Or will he once again let his ego and enigmatic nature undercut his production again? Because Alexander has been touted first as this great player at Georgia, then at USC, now at Oregon, at the first two places it didn't materialize. Is this the year things click for him? Like, why is it going to be different now?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I mean, I think you could say his true freshman year at Georgia, obviously he flashed late in the year, national title game, made a big name for himself. I think had he stayed at Georgia and just been plugged into the program and had his mind right, he'd probably either be in the NFL right now or on his way. But clearly, he was more concerned about other things and made the jump to USC. I think, and I know at the time when he reached out to Oregon and Oregon passed on him or passed on pursuing him at least.
Interesting.
USC instead. I think 2 years later, he's had a couple of years. Obviously, he chose to redshirt after part of the way through last year. If you look at his snaps last year, I think he was pretty consistent, much more consistent than he was the previous year. But you're right on. Like, this is the question, right? Like, when he's playing at his peak potential, I mean, this guy's an NFL player. It's just how do you get him, and how does he get himself to be in that position? Now, he's done and said all the right things all spring. He's been a leader on the field. I mean, maybe he looks at this as like, okay, this is kind of my last chance, right? Like, and that's kind of, if you're Oregon, that's kind of what you're hoping is like, okay, he got off track, he screwed around, he went to a program that, quite frankly, doesn't have great internal culture. I'm just going to say it. That's true. It's been true at USC for many years. I think they're trying to fix it now, but it wasn't there the last couple of years. And now he's at a program that I think does have great internal culture. And also he's older and more mature, and maybe he's to the point. That's the hope, right? Like, obviously we don't know until we know, but I think that's the way you're looking at it. And when I heard we were taking him, I'm like, well, it can't hurt, right? We have the culture that he's not going to ruin our locker room. If he busts out, then we'll send him packing and we'll the next guy up. But if he hits, then that's a great guy to have, right? So you're spot on. I think you're looking at Amari and Bear as probably your two starters in there. And then, like you said, you got guys like Tiana Gray, who's been flashing. You've got Xavier Sims, who's been flashing. Terrence Green. Aiden Breland is another one, particularly in the pass rush game. I think you'll see him on your interior pass rusher in long down and distance situations. And then, some other younger guys as well that are all developing. They can all play. So we'll see how the rotation shakes out. But it's an opportunity. I'd like to see Oregon rotate more along all the defensive spots this year, because I think they have the depth to do it. And I think the separation between the ones and the twos and the threes isn't so great, where it's hurting you to rotate more, right? You're actually keeping guys fresher. And if you only take a little bit of a hit, or even if it's like a comparable quality, then why not, right?
Well, I personally think Bear Alexander might be smarter than what and more emotionally mature than what we're giving credit for, because he did leave Georgia. Had he stayed at Georgia, he might be incarcerated at this point.
Well, that is a good point. Yeah, he might have been caught up
in
some car antics. That's a good point.
So there's something there, man. Got to give him credit for that.
That's good. That's good.
I know all the reports about his work ethic this spring have been really, really solid. So
good.
Awesome. All right, at linebacker, inside linebacker, Devin Jackson, obviously a good player, 47 tackles last year, 1.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. Does Oregon expect him to take the next step this year and become a truly dominant player? And then Bryce Betcher, back at linebacker after an amazing year with 94 tackles, 50 solo, 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 4 passes defended. I mean, what a great player. So how will Oregon feature his skill set this year? And then you've got, some other guys, Jerry Mixon and Akmar Motudi listed as backups at linebacker. Who else will compete for snaps? And how do you think the starters play the vast majority of the snaps? Or like you said, do you get more rotation this year because you can?
Yeah. So Bryce, what a story, right? It's funny because he started playing for the football team. He's a local Eugene kid. He's a walk-on in both baseball and football.
Oh, wow.
Got drafted in baseball this past spring, decided to come back and play one more year of football anyway. Really cool story. And when he started playing a decent amount in 2023 season, most of us were like, oh no. Because he was like, why is this guy playing? Why is this walk-on? It's kind of why is this walk-on playing? We got all these other guys on the team. And he was good at times, but you could also see, his weaknesses that year. And then, as we rolled into 24 and found out that he was going to be one of the starters alongside Bassa, we're all like, oh, no, this isn't good. But he was phenomenal, right? He had a great season. He still, obviously he still has limitations like most players do, but he certainly is a guy who maximizes the abilities he has. He plays the position with a lot of instinct, which is important at that position, obviously, and obviously had a great year. So obviously he'll be the captain of the defense there in the middle, back for his final year at Oregon, inside linebacker. You mentioned Devin Jackson. He was actually hurt all spring. I'm not sure he's going to be available to start the season. So that's a question mark whether when he will return and be available to play. In his absence, I think the guy that stepped up the most was Jerry Mixon, who is now in his junior year, played sparingly his first 2 years, special teams, a little bit of action here and there. Kind of looked like a guy who he's actually related to the NFL player Joe Mixon. He's like a nephew or cousin or something.
Interesting.
But he kind of seemed like a guy that maybe never wouldn't put it all together. But this spring, has certainly been his best play by far. So he's going to be in the running there alongside Bryce to start. And then beyond that, you've got a trio of 2024 recruits who are all redshirt freshmen this year, kind of waiting to see which of these three pop or maybe more of them pop and able to take on a role and carve out some playing time this year. That'd be Dylan Williams, Braden Platt, and Kamara Matudi, who you mentioned earlier. So of the three, I think it's either Platt or Matudi seem most likely, most ready to play. But again, that is one of the things I'm most interested in seeing play out through fall camp and then into the fall itself is what does that linebacker rotation look like, for sure.
All right. So getting to DB, this is the spot that's closest to my heart. So I always have a little question there. So you've got a lot of questions with 0 returning starters. That said, there's some star power back there. Likely stars include safety Dylan Thieneman, who transfers from Purdue. You got Theron Johnson from Northwestern, Jaden Kennedy from Ole Miss. You've also got projected starter or guys in safety Peyton Woodward and Sion Laulea. Also competing for time, you've got Jaleel Florence, Ife Obigdegwu, Dalen Austin, Kingston Lopa, Aaron Flowers. First of all, does that sound correct?
I mean, you named a lot of players. I don't know that I would agree with. I'll just break down what I think.
Yeah, break down. You tell me the way it is.
I'll start with nickel. So Oregon has a distinct nickel position. The returner at that position was the backup last year, Dalen Austin, who's a redshirt sophomore this year out of Long Beach, California. Okay. He played backup nickel last year. I think it's either him and the projected other player there is Jaden Kennedy, the transfer you mentioned from Tulane and Ole Miss. So Coach Hampton, our DB's coach, coached him early in his career when he was at Tulane. Then he transferred to Ole Miss. Hampton came here, and we brought him back over. So I think those are the two guys you're going to see most likely at the nickel position. I'd probably pick Austin to be the starter and Kennedy the backup at this point in time. Okay. Now, if we want to go to safety, you're right on Thieneman. He's definitely – I think he was a guy that Oregon intentionally targeted and brought in to be the veteran of the DB room and kind of the leader on the field of the entire back end of the defense. So I'd be shocked if he's not a starter. I don't even consider that a possibility. So the Purdue transfer from the Big Ten school. And then at the other safety position, I think you're going to see a guy who played a little bit. We saw him a little bit late in the year. Kingston Lopa, a really tall, rangy guy, redshirt freshman, played a little bit toward the end of last season, but he's really taken the reins and will probably be the second starting safety. And then you look behind those two, and you've got a trio of safeties who I think are all going to be competing for playing time back there. And that's true freshman 5-star Trey McNutt, who's definitely had some flashes in the spring as well. And then more likely the other two you mentioned are both either redshirt freshmen or sophomore. They're both second-year players. Peyton Woodyard, who actually enrolled at Alabama originally, and then when they had their coaching change, portaled out before playing a game there and came to Oregon. So he played sparingly on special teams mostly last year at Oregon. And then the other one being redshirt freshman Aaron Flowers out of Texas, who Oregon got in the 2024 class as well. So I think those three between Flowers and Woodyard and McNutt, you're going to see the rest of that safety rotation behind Lopa and Thieneman. Now, if we move to outside corner, this is where Oregon just has an embarrassment of riches when it comes to talent. Now, not a lot of experience, right? I'll tell you right now, one of the starters absolutely is going to be Ife Obigdegwu, who's a redshirt freshman out of Baltimore, Maryland. 6'3", his arms hang down to his knees. He looks like every corner you'd want to look like. He played incredibly off the field last year, didn't play on the field. I'll be shocked if he's not one of the outside corner starters and a very high-level player in this defense this year. Now, you look at the other corner spot, and you got a bunch of guys who are competing for that spot. You mentioned Sione Lalia as a safety. He's actually not safety. He's an outside corner as well. He is a JUCO transfer out of San Mateo. He'll be competing. Another one that will be competing there is Jaleel Florence, who's now a redshirt junior. He actually started several games for Oregon, or most of the season for Oregon in 2023, was injured all of last year, returned now, and he'll be competing to be a starter again at that second spot. And then finally, Naheem Offord, true freshman 5-star out of Alabama, has also had an incredible spring. He will probably be competing to start at that spot as well. And then I didn't even mention all the other outside corners who are going to be competing for playing time. I'll just go through them real quick. Brandon Finney Jr., another true freshman. He probably redshirts. Darren Johnson, the transfer who was the second team, I think, all Big Ten conference last year out of Northwestern. He could be as low as 5th on the corner depth chart, maybe even 6th on the corner depth chart.
Wow.
I'm not saying he's a bad player. I'm just saying there's so many players in this room. It's going to be really tough and really interesting to see how it shakes out. Dakota Fields is returning from injury as well. He's probably going to have a hard time getting back up into the top of the rotation, but he's flashed a little bit early last year as a true freshman before getting injured. Dorian Brew, another true freshman. He'll probably redshirt. And then finally, I wanted to mention, I guess that's it. I feel like I missed one.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent in that room for sure. And so seeing how it all plays out I did mention, I did miss the other true freshman that I do want to mention, which is, Brandon Finney Jr. Apparently he's had a great summer as well. So another true freshman that Oregon snatched out over Penn State there late in the recruiting cycle. So there's a ton of talent at corner and there's not enough playing time to go around.
We'll turn away from the secondary and towards specialists now, but I just want to ask real quick. I have to, just because I'm me, and I nerd out on DB play. So I'm a little bit of a Dylan Thieneman skeptic. He made a lot of flash plays at Purdue, but he also made routine breakdowns in coverage, like on the regular. And I understand that playing for Purdue must have been frustrating last year, and he's clearly a high-end athlete, but he was not a consistent player. Can Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoi get the most out of him, you think?
I mean, I think if he's not executing his assignment, then he'll probably get replaced at some point, right? Yeah. And I think I kind of look at that as, is it a function of he's trying to do too much because his teammates don't have it? Mm-hmm. You know, maybe he's trying to overcompensate for them. I'm not saying that's wise or what he should be doing. It's not, but I think you oftentimes see that.
The natural thing to do, though.
Yeah. So we'll see. I certainly think there are other guys at his position who may be more talented than him, but I think the level of experience he has, will mean something for Oregon. I think that's why they went and got him.
Awesome. All right, let's turn to specialists quickly. Starting kicker and all-name team captain Atticus Sappington returns.
Yeah, I like to call him like Lieutenant Colonel Sir Atticus Sappington of thinking like some like British redcoats, like early 1800s era. It just feels like if you saw a movie with like one of those guys like on a horseback leading his like 1800s era British soldiers, that would be the name.
Love that too. I always think of To Kill a Mockingbird because they've got Atticus Finch. So but that's that. I like that too. So he's back. Punter Ross James. What are your expectations for the kicking game this year?
So Ross James, interestingly enough, 2 seasons ago, his stats compared like right alongside the Iowa legend. He didn't have nearly as many attempts, obviously, but if you actually looked at like averages, inside 20, all those things, like Ross James' numbers were almost identical with whatever the guy.
Torrey Taylor.
Yeah, Torrey Taylor.
Torrey Taylor, sorry.
But last year, his numbers went way down. So I don't know what to expect from him. My goal is never to punt, so I hate punting. The fewer punts, the better. I absolutely am the polar opposite of every Iowa fan who thinks like punting is winning. Punting is losing. It is the literal definition of losing. You failed at your job, and now you were giving the ball away.
Don't tell Kirk Ferentz that.
I don't care. It's right. It's factually correct. So I like. We don't punt a lot, and I like that. I just like if we have to punt, don't screw it up.
Awesome. All right, that's
Kicking,
good.
You know, same thing. I don't like to kick either. So, you know, field
Cool.
goals are losing.
I mean, you know, and I'm not even. I hate defending Iowa, but like they do find a way a lot of times. That it's the most frustrating thing in the whole wide world, and we've dealt with it for so long that somehow, even though you outplay them, you know statistically by a lot generally, they find a way to win, and sometimes it's because of special teams, and it's maddening. So
Yeah, it's so frustrating. Or they just force a turnover when they shouldn't, and you lose a game you dominated on the stats. Yeah.
The Ducks actually play at Iowa this year, so
I know. So have fun with that.
That game is actually number 2 on my list of like tough games this year after the trip to Penn State for the whiteout.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, let's transit. That's a natural transition to the schedule game.
There you go.
All right. Well, we love the schedule game here. So let's talk right off the bat. You open up August 30th, Montana State. Now, Montana State's a very good FCS program. They had Tommy Millott last year. He's a super athlete at quarterback. If he was back this year, I'm not saying Oregon would be in danger of losing this game, but I would at least have to think about it. But because he's not, I got to think that this is going to be Oregon flexing pretty hard.
Yeah, I think especially after they played so poorly in their FCS game last year against Idaho State, a 24-14 win. They never really were in danger of losing, but it just was super unsatisfactory, right? Just, fumbled, not literally fumbled, but just fumbled their way around the field for 4 quarters, couldn't get in the end zone, played really sloppy. So I think that Dan will use that this year as motivation going into this game. Like, hey, you remember what happened last year? And I expect this game to be more of a comfortable win for sure.
Yeah. And then you move on week 2. You've got a really interesting game against Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State was one of the most consistent programs around, winning 10 games, I think, 4 or 5 times in the last 7 or 8 years, and being really good generally. And then last year, the bottom fell out, and they went 3-9. I'm not sure what to expect from Oklahoma State this year. They just seem like a team that, I don't believe they're going to be bad like they were last year, because I think Mike Gundy is too good of a coach. At the same time, there are holes in this roster. There's no way you filled all of them. So how do you feel about this game going into it?
I mean, it's at home. It's week 2, so you've already played a game. I would be concerned if Oregon doesn't win this game comfortably, right? With everything you just said, right? I mean, it's a pretty big mismatch on paper. This is a game where if you expect to have the kind of year that Oregon expects to have, which is make the playoffs, do something once you get there, then this is a game you need to take care of handily, right? And I think if it's a struggle, then that may be a sign of things to look out for.
Mm-hmm.
I could see it being interesting for like a quarter and a half. Like maybe Mike Gundy's got a really good game plan, and he figures something out early and they get a turnover and whatever. But I can't believe the Cowboys are going to have a chance in this game. John, what do you think?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, maybe for about a half, but I just think the talent disparity is too much. And I think Oregon is just, and I just trust in Dan Lanning. I just do. And his ability to adjust as well.
Same. All right. Next up, you start conference play at Northwestern. Now, it's on the lake, so it's a unique atmosphere. And I think you actually get to play them on the lake. We don't. I'm kind of jealous. So that's an interesting environment. David Braun is under a lot of pressure this year. He had a good year in year 1, going 8-5, but then last year dropped to 4-8, and the defense was okay, but the offense kind of fell off a cliff. I think they've brought in some better playmakers. I think Griffin Wild at receiver could be an interesting piece, and a guy who's can do some things. I think Preston Stone is an upgrade at quarterback. Yeah. I think they'll be a little better on the offensive line, but I don't know. I just don't think Northwestern has the firepower to make this interesting for a very long time.
I certainly would hope not. I mean, again, this is, if you're Oregon and you are who you think you are, like this is a game you take care of comfortably. Like I liken this to the game at Purdue last year, right? Where you just go in there, and that was a Friday night game. And is this a Friday night game too? I know Oregon has a Friday game this year. You go in there and you just grind them out, and put it away early and kind of put it on cruise control, hopefully in the second half.
Yeah, I think, North, as long as you still show up and take care of business, I think it should definitely be a win for Oregon. Northwestern is another one of those teams that just randomly will come up and bite you, or at least give you a scare. I think their defense is going to be pretty solid this year, so there could be a test there, more so than what you might be anticipating. But I do think that Oregon should be able to handle it and pull out a win here, and pretty easily, I think.
Yeah. So the next game, the outcome isn't really in doubt, but I'm interested in what you think about the Oregon State game. I mean, it is, for me, the Civil War was always a game I loved watching. I enjoyed Mike Riley teams. I enjoyed, Bellotti teams and Oregon and all those kind of stuff going back and forth. And it was a very hated, contentious thing. I've been to Corvallis for a game when the Gophers were out there a few years ago. Yeah. And it's actually a fun scene. And other than the dumb chainsaw noise they make way too often, which is just irritating beyond belief. But how does it feel? Because Oregon State's kind of a shell, they're a group of 5 team now. So it must hit a lot different now that playing them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Oregon has dominated the rivalry for most of my life, or particularly the last 20 years. There was an interesting stretch in the 2000s where Oregon State was pretty good, and they traded wins like home. They each won at home for like 8 or 9 straight years. It was the home win, and then kind of Oregon kind of took off, in the Chip Kelly, and then won a bunch in a row after that. And then I think we dropped one in 2016, which was our like tank year. And then we dropped another one or 2 in a row. We lost the COVID one, which was really weird. And then we blew a huge lead in Dan's first year at Corvallis in 22. But yeah, the teams are they're so outmatched. And this is at home. I mean, we blew them out in Corvallis last year by like 30, and I think their team is worse this year. So I don't really think this is going to be much of it. And then interestingly, there's no current game scheduled in this rivalry beyond this year.
So sad.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen there. I think it's a byproduct of a couple things. Like Oregon's schedule is full for the next couple of years, and so for them to be able to make this game happen, they have to buy out some other games. They either have the second half of the Oklahoma State, the return game to Oklahoma State's next year. They've got a Baylor home and home right after that, the next 2 years. And then they've got a couple of games scheduled with some Mountain West schools, some like two home, 1 away kind of series. So they have to do something anyway. I'm really curious to see what Oregon does schedule as a tangent, but scheduling wise in the future. And I think they're kind of waiting to see, does this SEC scheduling agreement get put in place? Because then that's going to change everybody's schedules. I think also, if you're looking at it, we play 9 conference games. Everybody wants to get 7 home games, right? That means you basically can have 1 out-of-conference road game every other year, right? In your years when you play 5 home games, you can play an out-of-conference road games. But in years when you play 5 conference road games, then you have to have all 3 of your non-con be home.
Yep.
And if Oregon continues the Oregon State series, then basically we can't do a home and home with anybody. That would be
you don't want to do that.
And you don't want you don't want to block yourself out of being able to do like premium home and homes with SEC or ACC or Big 12 schools. And so it's kind of like you're stuck in this conundrum. I think Oregon would pay them to come to Oregon every year, but I don't think Oregon State would agree to that.
No.
So it's kind of this weird. There's a lot of bad vibe right now between mostly the fan bases, I think, which are the Oregon State fan base primarily.
Not great times in Corvallis. So anyway, we'll roll on out of that. At this point,
this is it. Penn State.
At this point, Oregon's 4-0, and this is the game. So at Penn State, I'll be full disclosure, Doug. I did say I haven't picked this game particularly, but I have picked Penn State to win the national title. That is my early pick to win the Natty.
I'll take that bet.
Yeah, fair.
Penn State is not winning the national title.
I'm ready to talk about it. So Penn State returns has a
I know.
phenomenal defense, unbelievable coordinator. They have an incredible running game, probably the best pair of backs in the country, solid offensive line. They brought in receivers to fix their problems in Devontae Ross, Trevor Pena, etc. And hopefully give Drew Aller some better targets. Drew Aller had a really good year last year, but he wasn't consistent enough throwing it down the field. And I think part of that was his receivers not getting open. But also, he also just wasn't the best deep ball thrower. So how do you see this? I think what's really interesting to this game is if this was week 1, 2, or 3, I think I would lean towards Penn State because Oregon has such a new offensive line that I think that Penn State might be able to exploit that. But this is week 5. Oregon's going to have a whole month to figure out, what their best lineup and have their guys ready to go on the offensive line. So this feels like a true coin flip to me, at least. How do you see it, Doug?
Yeah, I agree. I think it feels a lot like that Ohio State Oregon game last year, about the same time of the season. I think it was game 5, game 6 last year. Game 6 last year. I think it's going to be a great environment. Obviously, with the whiteout in Happy Valley. Unfortunately, I'm not able to go. My granddaughter's birthday is on the exact same day. So her first birthday. So I had everything booked and I had to cancel it all. But I'll definitely be watching. It's going to be an incredible game. I think it's going to be a coin flip game. I'm going to pick Penn State to win because I think that is the obvious choice. They're the home team with a great environment. I think, like you said, they have all the things you just mentioned. They have more certainty at a lot of positions than Oregon does. So at this point in time, now week of, I could think differently if we've seen 5 games out of both teams, 4 games out of both teams. But right now, I would definitely pick Penn State to win that game. But I think it'll be a good game. But here's why everything you said about Penn State winning the title is what I disagree with.
Okay.
For Penn State to win the title, it would require James Franklin to win 4 straight games against top 10 opponents. Yeah. And probably at least 2 of those against top 5 opponents. And until he can do that, I'm not betting on it.
That's fair. I would argue he's made better coaching decisions in the last couple of years than he used to make. I've seen that firsthand. It cost us. We frankly had them beat last year, and he faked a punt and got PJ Fleck and won a game off of that. Yeah. So I've seen James Franklin grow as a decision maker, as a coach. So I'm with you. I think I hear what you're saying, and I can see where that would trip them up. I just think, and they also have such great coordinators in Knowles and Kotelnicki. The stars are kind of aligning, but I hear you. So, John, what's your take? We both got Penn State maybe winning narrowly here. What do you have?
I'm with, for now, I have to pick Penn State. I have an odd prediction, and I know this might be, it's a long shot, and I don't know why I have had this feeling, but I think Penn State wins the Big Ten. But then Oregon finds a way into the national title.
That's right. That is your pick.
I'll take that. I'll take
it. I think Oregon finally gets it done. It's a weird feeling I got this year. I don't have a lot to back it up with right now, but I just trust in Dan Lanning. I don't know. I just do.
I actually like us better in 26. I think 26 is going to be, we're going to have all these guys we've been talking about who haven't played yet are going to be back in 26. With a year of starting under the belt, and I think everything aligns then. But hey, I'll take it. If we win a title, I don't care when or how it happens.
Yeah, I got a feeling, man. It's just you're so close. It's ridiculous. So
don't remind me.
It's just I know. I feel like it's only a matter of time, and I feel like it's going to happen sooner than later. Maybe it is next year, but I got a good feeling about that happening.
So here is a really good buy for Oregon, I think.
Yeah.
They get 2 weeks to get ready for Indiana. Man, if this game was in Bloomington and if Oregon didn't have a bye, I think it could be really interesting for a while at least. But I got to think that with 2 weeks to get ready, Dan Lanning's going to have them breathing fire. And I just don't think I like Indiana a lot. I think they have good weapons. But what I don't think Indiana has is the line of scrimmage play that you need to keep up in a big game where you're throwing haymakers back and forth. I think that's where they fall short a little bit. So I do think Oregon wins that one convincingly, but what do you both think? Doug, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Oregon wins comfortably. I mean, I'm not going to say it's like a 30-point blowout, but by
No.
14-20, somewhere in that range. Maybe it's a little closer, a little tight early. But one thing I, didn't get to say at the end of the defensive talk is I think when we talk about like where Oregon might rank defensively or statistically or whatnot, I think you're going to see, because we're playing so many guys, new guys this year, I think in those first 4 or 5 weeks, I think you're going to see mistakes, right? You're going to see some big plays come off of that. But I think by the time you get to midseason, late season, now these guys are going to get better and better and better, right? The acceleration of their talent matching, now they're having some experience and learning on the go, right? I think those things are going to really accelerate the defense. So I think you're going to see maybe the defense over the course of 12 games is not ranked any differently than last year. Maybe they're 15th ranked, but I think they're going to be at the end of the season a much better unit than they are at the beginning of the season. And so I think that's this Indiana game, I think, is where you kind of see that rounding into form a little bit after Penn State. You kind of the 2 weeks, maybe you work on some stuff and you come back. And I think that's where I'm kind of in agreement with you, is where if this game was where that that Northwestern game was, I'd be a little bit more worried about it. But I think at this point in the season, I think Oregon and the talent advantage and being at home will win out.
Sure. Agreed.
John, you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Go to Rutgers next. We don't have to belabor this, but I have a lot of respect for Greg Schiano. His teams play defense. They run the ball. They're fundamentally sound. They have Ethan Kaliak-Mattis at quarterback. You're going to eat him alive. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I think
it'll be an ugly road win.
Yeah. I think that's going to be real lopsided real early, and I don't think we're going to have a lot. I think that one's going to be by halftime. It's going to be a
non-enjoyable game. Like, it's just going to be an ugly game. Like,
yeah, I think that's fair. John, you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I think Schiano has the ability to make it ugly due to his like what Mike already said.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think there's ever going to be a doubt that Oregon's going to win this game. And especially as long as you keep the pressure on Ethan, you're going to be great. So,
and then you've got the quasi revenge game against Wisconsin. So that's interesting. Wisconsin, Luke Fickell may be coaching for his job by this point in the season. Wisconsin has a really tough run in the middle where they have to play, I think, 3 of the 4 best teams in the Big Ten in about a month. And Oregon is one of those teams, of course. I don't love this matchup for the Badgers because I flat out don't believe in Billy Edwards. I think they'll be improved. I think their defense will be better. I think they brought in some nice pieces. I think they'll be a little better at receiver. They'll be pretty good at running back. I think they'll be good there. But I just don't think Billy Edwards can do enough. I think he throws too many interceptions, and I don't think he's, efficient enough to make this a game.
I think Oregon runs away with this one. I don't where this falls on the schedule for Wisconsin, I think is terrible, right? Like, you mentioned all those other teams are going to play leading into this. And then is Fickell still even the coach? Has the team quit on him? Like, I think Oregon's going to be peaking at this time. They're going to be coming back home. This one just feels like boom, gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll be a lot of, so if that happens going into this bye week, we'd have to be 7-1, and I imagine would probably be ranked in the top, 5-ish at that point, especially if the Penn State game is as close as we think it's going to be. If this wasn't a bye before, going to Kinnick, I could talk myself into this being a really tough run because Iowa can muck it up. They play really good defense. They force turnovers. They can score on short fields. They finally have a quarterback who's worth something. They can run the ball. They have a great offensive line, elite offensive line. So I think Iowa will run the ball okay, at least in the first half. I think they'll run the ball a little bit on you. But I don't believe in Iowa's skill players. I just don't. I think the quarterback's nice, but the wide receivers and even the running backs, I think, have limited upside compared to like Caleb Johnson, who they had last year. So I think this is one that gets away. I think you hear a lot of Iowa fans complaining about Kirk Ferentz's tenure coming out of this one. What do you think, Doug?
I mean, I would like that. This to me feels like this year's Wisconsin game, right? Or it's going to be on the road. It's going to be ugly. It's going to end up like 24-20 or something. I think Oregon wins, but I think it's going to Iowa's going to muck it up and make some plays and weird special teams BS or something. And it'll just be like an ugly win that you have to sweat out and hate every minute of.
I mean, that's playing Iowa for all of us. So
Yeah.
that's the way it is. I agree. I think that look, on paper, Oregon should absolutely destroy Iowa, but knowing Iowa as well as we do, they have a way of really making some of the best teams have a tough time going about it. So I think defensively they should be solid. Although I will say that Iowa is starting to show some cracks, and I mean by minute, but like in ways that we've never seen starting last year, and maybe that'll be shored up. Phil Parker is fantastic. But I agree with Mike, man. I just don't know if they're going to be able to score points. That's the thing. Like they might, get a turnover or two or some crazy special teams play. And I do think Gronowski's a much, much, much better quarterback. But I don't, other than their tight end, which is always a threat, I don't know who they're throwing to that's going to be reliable or as good or be able to, withstand the Oregon DBs. I don't see it. So I'm with you. I think it could be ugly for maybe about a half, and then Oregon kind of starts to get it all together and pulls away in the third and then puts it away in the fourth. So that's where I'm at.
Can Iowa run the ball on Oregon? If Iowa can run the ball, then all bets are off. Mm-hmm. But if you figure out a way to make them throw the ball, then it's going to get really lopsided, I think.
Yeah.
So that'll be an interesting one. So you would be doing really well at that point, still just the one loss. And then you host the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And this is one where if it was at home and we didn't have a first-year quarterback, I could talk myself into this being competitive. I think we have some good pieces. I think we have a really good defense. I think we've got good line of scrimmage players. We've got great running backs, some of the best running backs in the Big Ten. But I think that going to Autzen, as loud as it gets, I think you're going to have Drake seeing ghosts. And this is going to be one where you chalk it up and you say, the Gophers say, you got a redshirt freshman quarterback and you're going to have a game like that goes sideways. I think this is a game for Drake that goes sideways.
A couple things I'm going to say here. One, I think where this sits in the schedule provides potentially the opening for Minnesota to either hang close or maybe even try to hang in for an upset. When coming off that road game, but more importantly, looking ahead to those final two games, which Oregon, is going to have both of those circled on the roadmap or, on the schedule there. So I think that could play in Minnesota's favor. Maybe it's one of those kind of like look ahead games where Oregon kind of plays sloppy. And then the other thing is I have a ton of respect for PJ Fleck. Oregon almost hired him the year we hired Coach Taggart in 2017.
Right.
I think he was right there in the finalists, and he really wanted the job. And there was a lot of people here that wanted to hire him as well. And I just the work he's done in Minnesota is incredible. He's super consistent. He always seems to keep games close, play tight. He plays up, right? He seems like he blows games against teams he shouldn't, but then he always plays the best teams a lot tougher than maybe he should, given the talent level there. So I have a lot of respect for him. This to me feels like maybe similar to last year's Maryland at Oregon game, where Oregon won the game and it wasn't ever really in doubt, but they never really put it away either. It fluctuated between 11 to 20 points for most of the game. And every time we thought we were going to put it away, Maryland would score. And again, they still were down 2 scores, but it was not where you can empty your bench kind of feeling. Mm-hmm. And this game feels to me like it might have that kind of vibe to it. Lower scoring than that game was, but maybe a similar vibe where maybe Oregon wins by 14 or 17, but they're fluctuating between 7 and 14. You guys make it close, and then we come back and put it up by 2 touchdowns. Then you get a field goal and get it back to 10, or something like that, or has that vibe to it.
We do have a really good secondary, and you have inexperienced receivers.
Yeah.
So if we can make you throw the ball, if we can make you force them to do that, then maybe something happens there. I just think, and Dante Moore is also a first-year starter, but he's a third-year player and he's played before. So I just think he's just got the experience advantage. I think in 26 we would have a better chance at that point with a more seasoned quarterback. But I just don't think we're rolling into Autzen and pulling off the win. So
do we play 26?
I don't know if we do play it in 26.
I'm looking it up now.
I hope not.
Nope, we don't.
All right. Love it. We'll see you in the title game.
There we go. All right. Look forward to that.
All right. Then you host USC. So John and I are of the belief at this podcast at We Live for Saturday that Miller Moss was not the problem last year, that the problem was Lincoln Riley. And he had a team that was clearly a run-first team with a run-first offensive line, and he insisted on throwing in high-leverage situations, even though his offensive line couldn't protect the quarterback. And he insisted on doing that throughout the year. So I know USC's upgraded in talent. I know they can be dangerous. Well, that's the thing.
I think they will. They have for like 3 years from now or 2 years from now. But for this year, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't believe in Jaden Bayaba.
No,
I don't. I think he's a turnover machine, and I don't know if Lincoln Riley's gonna be able to fix that. So, this one, people are gonna pick this as a trendy good game. I think Oregon can name their score here.
I mean, we've definitely had USC's number of late. I mean, they came up to Oregon, and we didn't play them in 2022, which is the year they went to the Pac. This is the sneaky thing about Riley's first year in 2022. They didn't have to play Oregon. They didn't have to play Washington, and they didn't have to play another top. So they had a really weak schedule, and they went to 11-1 and went to, and then obviously lost to Utah in the Pac-12 title game. And then they came here the next year, and we absolutely just laid them to rest. I mean, that game was over in like early second quarter. It was total beatdown. And that was with Caleb Williams. And they don't have Caleb Williams right now. So I agree. I think this game will get a lot of hype. And I think a lot of it's USC, recruiting. We're back, the offseason natty. But I think Oregon's not going to look past this game. Like, I know Washington's the rival, but there is a lot of bad blood between Oregon and USC. A lot of our players are from Southern California. They're not going to lose that game, right? Like they're not. In fact, the fans may obviously consider Washington and Oregon State the two rivals. I think if you look at the players on the team, I think a lot of them would circle this game before they circle the Washington game.
Interesting. I love that. That's good. That's good insight.
We definitely have as being here for a while in Big Ten country. We've had a couple teams come in and peacock and tell us how they're going to dominate the Big Ten, and teams like Minnesota and Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, all that kind of stuff. We ran into that once before, and they said they were going to, the Big Ten's going to have to adjust to them, and that program has not fared too well.
You care about Nebraska?
You said
could be
the team that's never won a Big Ten title.
Yeah, and then USC did the same thing, and both Mike and I said they're not gonna win any more than 7 games this year, and we were right, and then for the reasons we said, and I get it, like they do have a ton of talent, they really do, and honestly, and none of it to me, it's not the talent to blame. It's Riley and his misunderstanding of what it is to play in the Big Ten, and especially at the line of scrimmage, which he was not prepared for that last year. I think he will be this year, a little bit better, but I don't think Maeva is it, and I don't also appreciate a coach that throws his players under the bus. I don't like that at all. I think that's ridiculous, and so I personally don't think Riley's has long. Is going to be there for very long. I think USC, once they do finally get a coach that understands what it's like to play in the Big Ten, then they could come back up and be that premier football program that they expect.
I completely agree with you, and I don't necessarily even think it's about playing in the Big Ten or not. I think Riley's just incredibly overrated as a coach.
Yep.
Yeah. And you look, you just watch those games last year, and how many of those games did he lose by just bad coaching decisions?
He got flat out. He got out coached repeatedly.
Look at the Washington game.
Yep.
Washington, everyone could run on Washington last year. Literally, look what Iowa did to them. You just line up the ball. Washington's defensive line and linebackers were terrible last year.
Yep.
Run the ball, and the entire second half of that game, USC ran the ball all over Washington. But they spent the whole first half digging themselves a hole because they were, he's got to throw it. He's got to throw it. I got to throw it.
Yep.
How did you have that game plan? And then you look at all those others where bad timeout uses, bad clock management, poor decision making. Like he single-handedly lost them at least 3 games last year.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or bad game planning, or both. And I think you go back in his record, and I think you see that time and over again, right? So I agree with you. And my theory around USC, obviously his buyout's huge, and they don't want to pay it.
Right.
But if you look at what they did this offseason, they went out and got Chad, what's his name, from Notre Dame, who's basically now the face of the program. It's crazy. This entire last 6 months, you haven't seen or heard 2 words about Lincoln Riley.
Yeah.
The entire recruiting operation and everything they're doing down there is all this Chad guy, leading the program and putting all these players together. And I think what you're going to see is maybe not this next offseason, but at some point, maybe, as these players are now recruiting are ready to actually play, I think they're going to be playing for a different coach. Yeah. I think they're going to get that buyout to a point where it's a little bit lower, and they've got buy-in from their donors to eat it and pay it, and buy-in from their new players that they've recruited, not with Riley leading the recruiting, but with their GM leading the recruiting. Right. Now those guys aren't loyal to Riley; they're loyal to the GM,
right?
And that's when they're gonna make the switch.
I will say one more thing though, is that it is funny how both USC and Nebraska have become best friends on Twitter. And
so funny.
Yeah, sorry. Just one more little fun. Yeah. So moving on though, we got to move on.
Yeah. At Washington, last game of the year. Yeah. So here's what I'll say about Washington. Great skill talent. Damon Williams, Jonah Coleman, Denzel Boston. That is a great QB wide receiver, running back trio. I think they're going to score points. I think they have nice skill players. I think they are not I don't think on the line of scrimmage they are ready yet. Mm-hmm. They weren't ready last year on the line of scrimmage. I don't think they're ready this year on the line of scrimmage. I think you push them around. I think you win this decisively. And Doug, I think we're talking about an 11-1 Oregon Ducks team.
That would be my prediction. Maybe 10-2 because you drop one somewhere along the way, either that game against Indiana or at Iowa or something. You drop a game and you end up 10-2. But that's kind of where I'm at. I think 11-1 would be what I would predict, and then you may not even make the Big Ten title game though, because it probably depends on tiebreakers and whatnot, just like it did last year, right? Like there was a tiebreaker between Indiana and Penn State to get the second spot, even though both were 8-1 in conference.
Right.
That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Actually, I'd prefer not to make the Big Ten title game in this format. I think it's better. I think it's better not to make it.
Okay. We'll take your spot if you want to offer.
Yeah, I was going to say. That's
the perversity of the system now, right? Because it's actually, and I've said this even before last year happened, I said the worst thing is to make your conference title game and lose it. Yes. Because then you played an extra game that probably dropped your ranking, and it doesn't, and you still have to go and play, the first round of the playoff, right? And so, obviously but that's so perverse because you want to win your conference, right? So it's like this weird perverse incentive, but
which the auto bids would have fixed by having everybody good play at the end of the.
There you go.
Yeah. The only thing that wouldn't fix is that Notre Dame. We have to figure out a way to make Notre Dame play that weekend.
Oh, they're gonna get in the Big Ten soon enough. They'll solve that problem. Will solve itself.
We'll see.
We'll see.
That would fix everything.
Yeah, we got to do something about Notre Dame one way or the other.
They can't sit there and. If we get to the point where all these other teams or every other team in the playoff is playing a 13th game, like Notre Dame has to play. Okay, you go play the worst G5 champ, something. You just got to play something. Yeah. You got to or play the last ACC or Big 12 team that didn't make their play-in tournament for that spot. You got to have some skin in the game in week 13 or game 13.
Agreed.
Well, Doug, you've been more than generous with your time. I know I can let you go unless I know we had talked earlier about maybe weighing in on your contender tier of the Big Ten. Do you want to quick give that?
Sure.
Yeah. What do you see? How do you see the Big Ten race breaking through? And who would you pick to win the Big Ten and national title at this point?
Sure. If you're talking about contenders to win the Big Ten title, I think obviously Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon are in that mix. Do I see a fourth contender? it's kind of hard for me to
Well,
see.
we can say playoff contenders too. We can open it up.
Okay, sure. To make the playoffs, I would add Illinois. I think with their schedule and their returning talent.
Yep.
Is Michigan the dark horse? I don't know.
Is Bryce Underwood Trevor Lawrence? If he is, then maybe they're a dark horse.
Yeah, they're turning over a lot. I think USC could be, to be honest. Like I know we just kind of spent a lot of time trashing them, but they have a fairly favorable schedule.
Sure.
And I wouldn't pick them, but they're not a dark horse to win the conference. I think, could they get to 10-2 and sneak into the playoffs? Wouldn't shock me. Like, I think it's possible. Wouldn't say it's likely.
Yeah. Right on. Well, Doug, thank you again so much for coming on. Please again say where people can find you, and also it'll be in the episode description. Doug does the QB11 show, so that will be in the description. So please go and give Doug a follow and check out all his content. It's fantastic stuff.
Thanks for having me on. I love your guys' show. At QB11 show on Twitter, or you can find us on all the podcast platforms. You can find me at Douglas TS on Twitter as well, and I pontificate 99% exclusively on college football. So
awesome. That's we do the same.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to have you on again sometime, and we're looking forward to this season. We're getting closer and closer.
I know fall camp's about to open up, so
I know, and we got Big Ten Media Days was really fun too.
So will they all have talking points?
Oh yeah, are they gonna have a pamphlet they're handing out?
Yeah,
here's our
here's all our metrics and
you know what they should just put up? They just should put the last 2 national title trophies.
Yeah. Here's our pamphlet.
Yeah. On either side of everyone who goes up there on the podium, there's just 2 natties next to them. Yeah, everyone who talks, no matter what team they're from. Like,
I love it.
Yeah. All right, Doug.
Thanks a lot.
Take it easy.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, that was great. That was fantastic. It was a lot of fun. Love getting to talk Ducks football a little bit more in depth. It's just so interesting these last couple of years, or this last year, I guess. Like learning about these new teams and then being in the Big Ten and all that. So it's just I don't know. It's nice to kind of feel like we're bringing them a little bit more into the fold of all the other teams that we've been so used to for so long. So. Yeah, good stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it was great stuff. And Doug was so in depth with everything.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate that. That's, really awesome. And we're looking forward to Oregon fans. It's good to have you on board if you see this.
Yep.
We cover all 18 Big Ten teams, including obviously your beloved Oregon Ducks. So this is our preview series. It's in a playlist on our YouTube page, and you can check out all our other previews as well. And John, I don't know. Normally I would want to talk to you a little bit, but I feel like we covered everything with Doug.
I think so too. I think we covered everything pretty well. And, I guess, we can wrap it all up here. And if you want to find, again, We Live for Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Podcast Addict. You can find us on Twitter at We Live for B1GSat, and Mike at Alibaba26, and me, John, at Norwegian Gopher. You can also email us, We Live for Saturday, B1G@gmail.com. We would really appreciate all the subscriptions, follows, all that kind of stuff, tweets, retweets, likes, everything. Just really help us out, especially on YouTube. We're trying to really build up there, so that would be much appreciated. And just share with all of your friends, all your Oregon Duck fans, and then anybody else out there, just Big Ten fans in general.
Absolutely. And John, Doug was a very special guest tonight. We have a very special guest coming up on Tuesday. So look out for Tuesday. We'll be doing our Penn State preview, and I'm telling you, you're going to be excited when you see who we've got as our Penn State guest. I'm really pumped about it. Like, yeah. I can't even wait. I'm like going to bed tonight thinking tomorrow's Tuesday because I'm so pumped about it. All right. Well, thanks for everything, everybody. And we will see you on Tuesday in the next one.